Angelina, good morning, and thank you for spending some time this morning with me to share your story and also talk about your amazing wines.
Thank you. I'm happy to be talking to you virtually and for us to actually talk a little bit about FLATTOP HILLS.
Absolutely. So you want to tell me a little bit about your history
Yes.
as a winemaker, and then we could go into the history of the Mondavi family.
Yeah, absolutely. My history, I actually started in the wine industry at the age of 10, working and basically pulling samples and helping out in the cellar, then eventually helping out in the laboratory and running all the analysis for all the wines. And then eventually graduating and kind of growing into being able to set up tastings for my grandfather, Peter Mondavi Sr., and my dad, Mark Mondavi, as well as my uncle, Pete Jr., and the ability to be able to kind of grow through really kind of started my foundation for my love of science and chemistry, even more so. And I ended up actually, when I finished high school, I ended up actually going to Villanova University, getting my undergrad in chemistry with a minor in business. And then after that, I traveled to a little bit around the world and worked some harvests, as well as getting my master's degree in winemaking at University of Adelaide, Wake Campus in South Australia. So I actually did that. And when I came home, I started working for a company based here in Napa. And I was really, really fortunate. I worked for them for 3 years before getting poached by someone else who shall remain unnamed. And I worked for him for 5.5 years as his assistant winemaker for a cult wine brand here in Napa Valley. Of which I'm, really excited because I was a part of a legacy of creating 100 Point Wines, which I think is really, really kind of cool. But the other beauty behind it was I traveled around the world making wines around the world. So I really got to learn the avenues and the ins and the outs of what, the importance of winemaking from different regions, but also really understanding the importance of terroir and the specificity of each of these varieties that we are going to be talking about today, and making sure that, when we release a wine, we're focusing on giving our customers, the best quality that we can for a killer price point.
Exactly. I think you guys did that, especially with the price points on your wine lineup that you have. So very good.
It's pretty awesome. Our whites, our whites and our rosé are really, product line between the $11.99, $13.99, and then the reds are up to $17.99. So, it's that beautiful ability of being able to create a wine that allows for everyone to feel like they're splurging, but without actually breaking their bank account.
Right.
Which I think is so important.
It is, because, sometimes we think that we need to drink wine for a special occasion. And I think if you make them accessible, you could have a daily, right? Like you could have your rosé with certain foods and so forth, your salads and so forth. And I think that's great. And obviously the price point that you guys have marketed and really established out there makes that happen for anyone to just to purchase your wine, right? So that's great.
Pretty cool. Thank you.
So you want to tell me a little bit about the Mondavi family in general?
Yeah, absolutely. My great-grandparents, Cesare and Rosa, actually immigrated from Italy over to the United States. They ended up residing in Virginia, Minnesota for a few years and started a grocery store business. And during Prohibition, it was legal to actually ship grapes from California all the way to the East Coast, because everyone was allowed to legally make 200 gallons of wine in their own basement for either sacramental purposes or for personal drinking, or medicinal is what we like to call it. And my great-grandfather, Cesare, soon realized he needed to get closer to the source. So he actually uprooted the family and moved to Lodi, California, where he resided for quite a period of time. and eventually ended up acquiring Charles Krug Winery, the oldest winery in Napa Valley, founded in 1861. And my great-grandparents, Cesare and Rose, actually purchased Charles Krug Winery in 1943. And it's actually been in our family ever since. So we're, 77 years? I can't even do my math right now. It's too early in the morning. But what's really kind of fascinating, what's really kind of cool about it is, our family, for those of you guys that do not know, our family, we did have a family rift. My grandfather, Peter Mondavi Sr., and his brother, Robert Mondavi, didn't necessarily see eye to eye. And Robert ended up splitting off of the family from Charles Krug Winery and actually started Robert Mondavi Winery. And at this point, currently today, no Mondavi actually owns a share of Robert Mondavi Winery or actually works at Robert Mondavi. It's actually owned by a conglomerate called Constellation. And Charles Krug, however, we are now into our 5th generation. As of last week, my baby sister actually had a little baby boy named Carlos, and we're really excited that our family is going from the 4th generation now, which I am, to the 5th generation, and hopefully for many, many generations to come.
Wow, you guys have an unbelievable lineage of winemaking. I mean, that's great, right? From Prohibition days all the way to now. And in your family, how many people are involved in the vineyards, winemaking in general?
Our entire family. So my uncle and my 2 cousins are very active, as well as my mom and my dad, and as well as my sisters, my 3 other sisters. So the entire family, we all own a portion of the company, and some of us sit on the board of directors, like myself, and then others are just brand ambassadors. But as a whole, as an entirety of the family, we're all very active in just different levels of the company. And I think that that's something that's really kind of exciting as well, because it's very family oriented. And then when you start talking about FLATTOP Hills, yes, we have our Charles Krug brand, we have our CK Mondavi brand, but FLATTOP Hills is really the newcomer of the family portfolio. And it's actually the 4th generation Mondavi family winery. And the beauty behind this is we talk about these flat top moments and what they actually are. And the vineyard source, which is actually right behind me, is actually our Dunnigan Hills property. Okay. And what's beautiful about that is we are able to source a majority of our fruit from our Dunnigan Hills property, which is about an hour and a half north east of St. Helena here in Napa Valley, where we reside. And it allows us to be able to create this beautiful dichotomy of not just, it's a separate appellation, but what it allows us to do is we can create consistency and we can create quality at a great price point. But my fondest memories as a kid, and you can actually see it on the website as well, is actually playing hide and seek and running around in the vineyards, running up the hills and rolling down the hills. And there's a beautiful 2-acre pond, or just shy of 2-acre pond on there. We used to swim and paddleboard and run the dogs there. And I still train my dog there today. So, it's really, we're all about family here, and we're all about, the sense of ownership and being able to recognize what we can actually contribute to the wine world, which is create an affordable price, but really good quality and a serious wine. And that's what excites me, especially coming from the 4th generation.
That's great. And where can anyone buy your FLATTOP Hills wine?
Yeah, right now, because of the current situation that we're in, you can pretty much find us in a lot of grocery stores. We are still nationally launching. We started the national launch right when COVID hit. So we're not 100% in, but what you can actually do is go to our website, flattoplines.com, and you can hit the Find My Locator button, and you can type in your address, and it will show you the locations that may have our wine nearest you.
Got it. So what you want to start off with, so we can go through the
we're gonna start with the Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
I actually really love the Sauvignon Blanc. I'm always looking for a really clean, crisp, vibrant Sauvignon Blanc that's really indicative of California. All of our wines are California appellated for the FLATTOP Hills program. And the reason being is we have this beautiful ability to actually source from growers that our family's been working with for over 70 years. And when that actually happens, it allows us to be able to have a little bit of a better control of the quality of fruit that we're really looking for. And this Sauvignon Blanc is predominantly from the Lodi region, as well as Monterey Coast. So the Monterey Coast adds that beautiful, vibrant acid. And then you have Lodi that adds a little bit of that bigger bodied, and you balance the two of them together. And it just really gives you a really vibrant, easy drinking, quaffable Sauvignon Blanc, at between $11.99 and $13.99, depending on where you're at. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And it's varietally correct. I mean, the fruit that's coming out of, you can't really go wrong. California makes really great wines.
Right.
And, when you're working with sourcing of fruit from growers that our family's been working with for such a long period of time, they actually know exactly what it is that we're looking for to maintain that resiliency and to retain that consistency year in, year out. But the other important thing too is FLATTOP Hills, we're just getting started. So the beauty behind this is as we continue to grow, we can actually grow with our growers as well as from our Dunnigan Hills property, and continue to plant to ensure that consistency as we grow maintains and stays the same. And I think that's something that's really, really important to note. For me as a winemaker, it just adds to the validity of how my family is and what we're all about, which is, we want accuracy. We want, true to the varietal. We want to talk about sustainability and giving back. And I really think that, these really tell that story. And I hope you realize that as you're tasting through that Sauvignon Blanc, there's that beautiful key lime, a little bit of kaffir lime, a hint of lemongrass. But then you also have these notes of a little bit of that passion fruit and lemon citrus notes as well. And then just a hint of nectarine or even a peach that's actually in that wine that I absolutely love. So you're getting that California bouquet, which is really indicative of all those different aromatics combined into one. And this is 100% stainless steel. So, it allows for us to be able to retain that brightness.
Notice this. I mean, I'm not surprised. You guys make great wines. And I mean, This is really, I love that the lemon finish at the end. That's very enjoyable. I'm a big citrus person, so I right now in the morning, I'm like, that is really good. I could have this.
Thank you. I really love that wine with just a simple caprese salad. Just really sets the mood for me.
Very good. Yeah, all the flavors, all this of the key lime pie. Now that you brought that to mind, it's like that's what I think when winemakers and somms start describing wines and you're sitting with them, and they go really deep into a lot of the flavors that normally, as a wine enthusiast, I only pick up certain things immediately, right? But like when you start telling me, you tell me like, hey, look, do you pick a little bit of key lime pie? I'm like, wow. Now I actually do that. The mandarin, the jasmine, very, very good.
Totally. So the next wine that we're going to actually talk about is the Chardonnay. And I grew up loving Chardonnay and drinking Chardonnay. So I am very much, this is, I think, when we were granted the opportunity to actually talk about and make a wine, I was most nervous about this because one, a lot of our competitors have already have an identifier and have really owned the sense of ownership of, Chardonnay, especially California appellated Chardonnay.
Right.
So when Randy, our winemaker, and myself as the consulting winemaker, we're kind of, walking through, one of the important things was we don't want to mimic anyone. What we want to do is we want to create our own identity within this pathway that we actually have. And one thing that I absolutely love about Chardonnay, and California Chardonnay in specific, is it really is terroir driven, but then sourcing from our Dunnigan Hills property as well as Monterey, which adds that beautiful citrus and vibrant acid. And then you have Central Coast as well, adding a little bit more of that acidity. And then our Dunnigan Hills really adds that body. Adding just a kiss of French oak really allows for this wine to really kind of meld together. So you're not getting an over oaked and you're not getting an over buttery Chardonnay. You're really getting a wine that speaks and blends well with food, but you can also drink it by itself. And I think that that's something that's really, really important about our Chardonnay. And I just love this Chardonnay. I could drink this wine day in, day out, no questions asked. And it does have a little bit of malolactic fermentation. So there is a little bit of that creaminess that goes with the wine, but it's not overpowering. So you're still getting those essence of the mandarin and the peach. It's very, very heavy peach and very heavy stone fruit on this wine, which I think is, very elegant. But then you get this pow of acid in the back that just makes you crave more. This wine goes great with any shellfish. And I love this with a great risotto. And kind of talking about the innovation, check out the labels. We've got a little peekaboo, and it's a wine glass, and it's a little bit more modern. It's a little bit more sleek, and it's a little bit edgier than what our family's really ever done. We're classic. We're the oldest winery in Napa Valley. So how do you come out with something that, takes our family to that next level? And I really feel like FLATTOP Hills really kind of fills in that void that we had. So not only are you focusing on that, but then, the labels are eye-catching, and the color scheme as well is really kind of cool and kind of, totally different, which I think is really kind of fun and unique as well. And then, you throw in the next wine, which is our Rosé. And I love talking about a Rosé. Primarily because we do not make rosé from any wines that we bleed. It is 100% intentionally. The vines are grown to go into our rosé program. So it's predominantly Grenache and Dolcetto for the 2019 vintage. So it's basically 50-50 Grenache, 50-50 and Dolcetto. The idea behind it is the Grenache adds this beautiful strawberry shortcake note, and then the Dolcetto adds these brooding blueberry and blackberry notes. And one thing to note, and I think it's really important, is yes, our color is a little bit darker than the normal rosés that you actually find out in the marketplace. But I think it's important to note our wine is it's dry. It's not sweet. It has a beautiful, vibrant acidity in the back palate. And I love this rosé. So when I say it's intentional, what we do is we actually source Dolcetto and Grenache vines specifically for a rosé program. We'll actually bring them to the winery here in Napa Valley. All of FLATTOP Hills is actually grown here in Napa Valley, or is processed here in Napa Valley at our facility. And when we bring it in, what we do is we actually press it off the skins almost immediately upon it, because it has traveled. We do source from a little bit further south to get our Dolcetto. So that color really kind of already is penetrating and leaking out by the time it actually reaches the winery. So that's why the color is a little bit darker. But I didn't want to go and do any fining to really hurt and minimize the aromatics and the flavor profile, because as you can smell, I always say it's really strawberry shortcake in a glass, and it's intense and it's so delicious. And I think that that's something that's really, really important to note, that we are this isn't an aftermath thought of a rosé. This is us intentionally sourcing fruit and working with growers that we absolutely love, that both Randy and I have great relationships with. And we both had great experiences when we were told we needed to make a rosé. We both sat down and I said, I love Grenache rosé. And he said, well, I've done Dolcetto. And I was like, that's really interesting.
Right.
Why don't we have a little bit of fun without telling and freaking out my whole family? So we did that and it worked, and it worked really, really well. Now the 2019, it's 50-50 Dolcetto and Grenache. 2020 is going to have a little bit of Carignan actually in it as well. It adds another layer of complexity to the wine, and adds a little bit of a more lemon citrus note, but you're still getting that strawberry shortcake. You're still getting those blueberries and those blackberry notes as well. So it just adds a little bit more complexity. And that's really the only difference between the 19 and the 20.
Got it. And I mean, I really enjoy that it's not a sweet rosé, right? There's a lot of sweet rosés out in the market. I really enjoy that this is a dry. I think, obviously having a Dolcetto and a Grenache is just what made a big difference as well. Beautiful. I mean, I think the color is really pretty as well. It's not as, as pink as normally the other ones usually, out in the market, but you have a darker color, but it's still beautiful. I like you said, I love the peekaboo design that you have on the, on your labels, and it looks very elegant. So that's what I was kind of shocked when I saw the price points again, right? I was like, this probably $35, $40 bottle. And especially it's coming from your family, right? So like, that's what it's going to be. And the way you guys are marketing this for people to really enjoy it as a daily is amazing for that price point. I mean, there's very few really good products at these type of prices, right? And do you see it as a very competitive space right now going through this?
Yes. This market, it's a really hot market right now. So we knew we had to get in the forefront of it while everyone else is kind of, everyone's kind of competing. But I do think, we have the story behind it. We have the generation behind it. Me as the consulting winemaker, part of the fourth generation. And, and then also making note, most of this is coming from our vineyards that we actually own ourselves. And I think that that's huge. And then if you guys actually see behind me, I'm going to kind of scoot you over a little bit. We actually are very, very forthcoming about our sustainability programs here in Napa Valley, but as well as our Dunnigan Hills property and appellation. I think it's important, my grandfather and my great-grandfather always said, if you put all your energy into the vineyards, it will provide you what you need quality-wise and to take it out. But you have to keep it sustainable, and you have to focus on that sustainability in order for us to exist for generations to come. We're not just in this for, a 2-year thing. Our family's been in the wine industry a little over 100 years now. So it's really important to know, we want to be around for another 100, 200, 300, 1,000 years. I would love that. And I think it's important to note that, sustainability is first and foremost the most important thing for any vineyard or any landowner. So one of the things that we actually do is we bring in a couple broods of sheep and about 2,000 head of sheep per, and we will actually put a gate up, and then we'll have a couple of Great Pyrenees dogs that are there. Kind of shepherding the sheep. And the sheep will actually go through, instead of taking a tractor through, what we'll do is the sheep will actually go through, they will actually eat all the grass and the cover crop in between, all the green that you see. They'll eat it down. But while they're doing that, they're actually obviously contributing to manure. And that manure is very nitrogen rich. And when we eventually do go through and disc, that manure will actually go into the soil and replenish the nutrients that the vines actually need for that coming year. The other important thing to know is we actually have, and you may see photos of it here and there, but we have owl boxes and we have raptor boxes.
Okay.
Raptors actually patrol during the day to remove any varmints or any creatures that like to dig holes and root and try to get to the vines, ends of the vine itself that's down all the roots. And then at night, the owls will be active, and they will actually patrol for the varmints at nighttime. And we also have bluebird boxes, which actually eat the insects. So you add a combination of all this, we're creating a full cycle, allowing for animals and Mother Nature to actually work within our vineyard in a natural cycle without having to change anything, without having to add any chemicals or anything like that to the actual ground. So I think that's something that's really, really important. The other thing too, our family has one of the largest grids for solar panels actually at a facility on top of the roof. Most people don't actually know about it, but we installed it quite a few years ago. And that's actually helped as well. So our family is very, we're always thinking, we're always moving forward, and we're always trying to project ourselves, 20 years ahead of schedule to ensure that we can maintain the quality and the sustainability and continue for legacies to come.
Do you guys have any of your parcels of land to be certified organic, or is it just part of just your environmental friendly that you do for all your property directly? Yeah,
we were organic for a period of time. However, we had to abandon that due to it takes 7 years, actually 8 years total to become organic certified. But nowadays, the technology is a little bit better, but when you have a very, very rainy season, or you have a pest that actually can come in and potentially wipe out the entire vineyard, the important thing to note is sometimes organic doesn't necessarily solve or will help fix that issue. And you have to abandon that. We actually, for us not to lose our crop in 2011 when it was a very, very rainy year to all mold, we actually had to make a conscious decision, and it was quite the argument, because it's a lot of legwork that our family did to become organic in certain vineyards. And when we had to abandon it, it was really because we had to save we had no choice but to save our crop.
Save your crop.
So our goal is always to be 100% sustainable and focus on sustainability now.
Well, I think with all the things you have in place every year and what you're doing for the sustainability and the ecosystem you created, for Mother Nature to say, this is the place I want to be. That's where the sheep are at. You got your owls, you have everything there, right? So, I mean, that was a great offset of, because I do see some labels are now on some wine labels. You can actually see that now, right? They're like, it is organic 100%. Or it is now, I see it even said vegan. And I mean, it's almost like you're going to Whole Foods, right? Wine labels now. I love that yours is, you guys are very traditional. Looks great, very elegant. But I've seen other ones just put all the other little labels and stickers on them, right? It's organic, it's this and that, and it's okay. But I mean, do you really see a big difference from when you're making your wine from the crop that was organic that you guys were doing to the normal sustainable way that you guys have?
No, from a wine standpoint, no, I see no difference, and I wouldn't even be able to tell you which was organic or which is not, let alone which is vegan, which is not. Most wines are actually vegan, contrary to what a lot of people realize. Myself as a winemaker, I'm very much a minimalist winemaker, so I'm really always striving to make sure that we don't have to manipulate the wine to be where it's at. It's really focusing on starting in the vineyards, as I was saying earlier, because when you're in the vineyards, you're going to get that concentration, you're going to get that development, flavor development, you're going to get what you actually need and what you require, without having to do over manipulation as a winemaker actually in the winery. And I think that that's very, very important, and it's very lucrative. And I'm hoping more and more people kind of trend that direction going forward.
Very good. I love that. I love how you covered that completely.
Thank you.
So very good points. And
so
now
the next one, the red blend.
Yes.
And as you can see, our red blend and our Cabernet have two totally different colored labels.
Yes.
The idea behind this was there's nothing more annoying than actually going to your wine cellar and you have two labels that look exactly the same.
Right.
And you have to pull them out and actually read them to actually see what it is that you just grabbed. So the idea of having a copper label for the red blend is just an identifier and a separation. To be able to really identify the red blend is very separate from the Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes.
So that's why that color. You'll also notice our whites and our rosé are under screw cap, and our reds are actually under a cork.
Wow.
And our marketing team decided that this is the avenue that they wanted to roll with, and I think it's kind of fun. It's a little bit different, but I do enjoy popping a cork at the end of the day. So there's nothing more satisfying, especially with red wines. So the red blend, there's a funny story behind this. For those of you guys that don't realize, oak is a huge part of influence for all red wines. Whether it's Cabernet, whether it's a Pinot, whether it's a red blend. Randy and I sat down and had to taste through a little over 180 oak profiles to really fine tune the oak influence that we wanted to go with. And the reason being is you don't want to just create a mold and say, okay, this is the only oak that we're using, because it may not work for that specific variety. Our red blend, predominantly Merlot and Zinfandel base, with a little bit of Petit Syrah in it, really led to us trialing this oak panel and kind of creating and really narrowing down flavor profiles that Randy and I really, really liked, but knew that we wanted to focus on for our red blend program. So once we had the base blend created of the Merlot and the Zinfandel and a little bit of the Petit Syrah, what we ended up doing was really kind of taking some of the oaks, and we fine-tuned it down to about 20. Then what we do is we'll actually soak that oak into a little blend of that base blend, let it sit for about 2 weeks. Then what we would do is we actually tasted it blind. And this is where I think it's so cool that the family was able to, because you're sitting in a room, you're sitting with our CEO, you're sitting with our head of our marketing, our head of our sales, myself, Randy, and as well as my dad and my uncle, and everyone tasting it blind. Randy and I don't even know, because we had the lab team actually create it and do it. And when you actually do that, all of a sudden you create this concept of, it's like, wow, I really love this, or I really, really love this oak profile. And unanimously, we all chose Hungarian oak.
Wow.
So Hungarian oak is what actually goes into our red blends, and it's absolutely beautiful. I love it. It adds this coke and dark chocolate note to the red blend that makes it a little bit more of a serious red blend. Again, it's not a sweet red blend. Most people are expecting there to be a little bit of sweetness, but there isn't that. It's more, you're adding all these different complexities, from the oak, but also from each of the varieties that we're actually using within that bottle. And then you have that beautiful acid balance as well, which just finesses it and makes it really a food-friendly wine, but also a wine that you can drink without anything.
Right. I think I've drank this just like with nothing. Just after a long day at work, gazillion Zoom calls and meetings, we're like, okay, I just need to try this again. And I mean, it tastes is great. I love that. I love the long finish on it. I mean, this is what I love about these wines. They're nice. They're not sweet. This is not a sweet at all. I love the dryness of it as well, and it's super well balanced. But you said so. It has a lot to do with the Hungarian oak of how this is all put together.
It has a lot to do with it definitely does. And the other thing too is that you're actually tasting a 2016 red blend, so it has a little bit of age on it too. So it's kind of helped kind of soften it, but also make it super approachable and easy to drink right now. So if you pick this up at your grocery store, you don't have to set it and age it. It's really meant to be drunk now.
Right.
But it can age because of that beautiful acid backbone that it actually has.
Yeah, it's very well structured. And I've never noticed, because it's always French oak, American oak, and so forth. So you guys really went out of the box in this one and said, we're going to try this, and how unanimously your whole family, through a blind tasting, came to that fruition, right? It's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really kind of funny. And my uncle asked, because my family has not been, we don't use a lot of Hungarian oak in our family or any of our wine, so to speak. So it kind of threw everyone kind of off kilter, like, why the Hungarian oak? And I was like, well, it adds this dark chocolate component that you just wouldn't find from French oak or even American oak for that matter. But that actually kind of leads us into the Cabernet Sauvignon next, which is actually French oak and American oak 50-50 blend that we actually worked with. And I think that's actually kind of fun. So as you can see, our Chardonnay has only solely French oak. Our red blend has specifically Hungarian oak, and then you have the Cabernet Sauvignon that has the American and the French oak. And the idea is we want to put out the best representation. So instead of pigeonholing ourselves and saying we're only going to use a Hungarian oak for our reds, it doesn't necessarily work that way. We tried the Hungarian oak thinking maybe it'll work, and it completely epically failed. And we all fell in love with French oak, American oak blend.
Right.
And I think that's something that's really kind of cool and kind of unique about this price point for us is we're really creating specific wines to help everyone enjoy it. So, all the wines are balanced. All the wines have a little bit of complexity. And I think that's something that's really important.
Yeah, I think now with this structure of a wine, and, it lives up to the full body cab salad that you would expect, right? From a 2017 from Napa, and for the price point of this, my goodness. I mean, these are just good gifts to give to your customers and so forth. It's like, they think it's a, expensive wine. It tastes like an expensive wine. I mean, this is
and the beautiful thing is, all of our wines are 13.5% or lower. So I think that's also something that's really kind of cool and, allows for that approachability and that ease of drinking. But the other cool thing about our Cabernet Sauvignon is we're predominantly sourcing from our Dunnigan Hills and Yolo County. But we're also sourcing a little bit of Cabernet from Monterey and the Monterey and Central Coast to add a little bit of that acid backbone. But then the other fun part is we're actually sourcing a little bit from Paso Robles. And the idea behind that is that Paso Robles adds that brooding, juicy, deep, dark, rich fruit. So you have the red fruit from the Monterey coast and the acid balance. Then you have this brooding, darker fruit from the Paso Robles, and then you have Yolo County and Dunnigan Hills that actually fills out that mid palate. So you combine all of them together, it really creates for a dynamic Cabernet that you just wouldn't normally find at this price point.
No, I've had this with some lamb, and it was just such a great compliment. But I pick up like a little those spicy components on this.
Totally. That's really just coming from the oak influence. So there's a little bit of, this is a fun wine for me in the sense that I'm always getting, whenever I'm tasting it, I'm getting that raspberry, I'm getting that red cherry, I'm getting that blackberry, I'm getting that blueberry. But then there's this whole other element of black pepper, maybe a little bit of white peppercorn that I'm getting, as well as a few other components as well, and even some baking spices and cooking spices. And that's all coming from the oak influence. And I think it just really adds just another element of complexity and really just makes it stand alone when if anyone ever gets bored and wants to do like a brand comparison side by side, it really puts our Cabernet as a standalone of its own, and the red blend as well. And again, these wines are not sweet. They haven't, we're not trying to entice the customer, with sweet wines. We're really focusing on what our quality and our fruit sourcing can actually provide without manipulating our wines. And I think we've accomplished that throughout the entire portfolio. I
love the fact that it doesn't have a big alcohol nose, right? And I love the fact that's where you're at 13.5, right, of your alcohol versus some of the other ones are usually higher. Yeah. We really focus on, picking, at an optimal level that we can obtain that ripeness and that sort of stuff, but without, blowing it out with alcohol. Right. I mean, and a lot of people think, well, obviously they like to see the legs on it when they look at a full body cab and so forth. I'm like, yeah, but it also kind of throws you off when you have the huge alcohol nose in the beginning, right? So it definitely have to let it sit there. You gotta, I usually use an aerator. I use a V-span. I'm like, let's get rid of all that, heavy alcohol, and so that we can enjoy the wine. So
totally. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. So what do you drink outside your family wines and the ones that you produce? What's one of your go-to wines that you drink?
Oh God!
What's one of your favorites?
That's a hard one. Let me think about this. What's one that I've been drinking lately? I've been drinking. I've actually been exploring a little bit more of the European. So I'm actually studying for my advanced sommelier, and I'm also working on my getting accepted into the WSET diploma course. And I've been exploring a little bit more of the Riojas and the Barolos, and really focusing on more European wines lately. So I wouldn't say I really have a favorite right now. I'm just doing my exploration and really trying to broaden my knowledge of really European wines in general, and having a lot of fun with it too. So that's really kind of what I've been really kind of focusing on. But if I'm not, typically, I'm not usually drinking a whole lot of wine at home. I'm usually drinking a cocktail. So that's kind of my, that's really totally my MO, because I'm tasting wines almost daily, every day. So at some point I kind of just need like a little bit of a palate cleanser. So that's what I do. But yeah, I've been focusing more heavily on European wines lately, and I've actually been enjoying it. And hoping to, get across. I also drink a lot of champagne. So I am a Billicart snob.
That's really nice. That's good. I think, obviously, when I'm from Spain, the Riojas, one of my favorites is Vega Sicilia. The Vega Sicilia brand. They have really good stuff. And my brother-in-law, he's from Spain, and he was telling me, you got to drink this wine. This is one of the best wines in Spain of their lineups and so forth. And I was like, wow, this is really good, because it's also a very competitive market. There's so many Riojas, right? So it's like, which one are you going to, and so forth. And I think that label and that brand itself, the history behind it, great wine. That's one of my favorites when I think about it. I'm like, I'm going to have the Vega Sicilia bottle. Those are always cool. Well, thanks again for your time and sharing this amazing wine with me. And we look forward to seeing what comes of it. More projects, more other labels.
And hopefully I see you in person the next time and not by a Zoom.
Exactly. What I want to do is hopefully in the summer, then we can go do some filming out at your property and putting together some content for you guys as well. So thanks again for your time.
Totally.